I was just looking at it, the current price of gold, with gold and silver, the current price of gold is equivalent of 1,300 and change 10 years ago. So how many miners, of 10 years worth of inflation, how many miners would have made money at $1,300 gold now? And that's the way I think you need to think about the current context. Silver, interestingly enough, for as much as we think it's undervalued, right, it's the equivalent of, I think it was like $12 over the same time frame. And $12, while it seems painfully low to us now, is actually historically a high price. I mean, it wasn't until 2006 that silver broke above 8 and stayed above there.
Welcome to Gold Silver Pros, where you'll learn the ins and outs of the gold and silver markets. Searching for the best precious metals deal? Our affiliates are of the utmost trust, quality, and highest customer service in the industry. Shop with our trusted partner, ARK Silver. Access special deals on silver, gold, and platinum through our website or call 307-264-9441.
Hey everybody, this is Rob Keynes of goldsilverpros.com, and I've invited on a panel of guests. Guests will be speaking next week in Spokane, Washington at the Silver Symposium to do sort of a pre-Silver Symposium view on the markets as we get ready to attend that conference. And I know that we're going to see a lot of you guys out in the audience out there as well. So it'd be fun to shake your hand and get to meet you for the first time. So we're joined on our I'll start with the upper left. We've got quite a few people here. We have Everard from ARK Silver, good friend who's been on the program many times. Ian, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks, Rob. And yourself?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for joining. We have Chris Marcus, my good friend from Arcadia Economics. Everybody knows him, I think, on the channel. Chris, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Nice to be here, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. We have Lobo Tiggre from the Independent Speculator. Lobo, how are you doing today?
Never underestimate the power of the dark side of the silver market. So I'm doing great, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Well, we'll get your views on that here in a moment. Down at my bottom left is Chen Lin, who runs Chen's Stock Picks. Chen, how are you doing today?
Great, thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you. And certainly last but certainly not least is Bob Coleman, Gold Silver Vault, who runs an excellent vaulting service we've used before. We highly recommend. Bob, how are you doing today?
Good. How you doing, Robert?
I'm not too bad. Trying to get through the week. We actually have cool weather here in Texas, which is nice. It's not 100 degrees anymore. So I don't know what to do with myself. I feel like I'm in wintertime. But looking at the market, so one of the things I want to talk about leading into the market, and I'm going to lead off with you, Lobo, and it's something we chatted about before we started the recording, the gold-silver ratio. It's one of the things that everybody talks about. Where is that? I mean, I know at one point we were heavily overvalued to the gold side. Has that gotten to a point in which you think it's more equitable, or you think there's still more room to run for silver?
All right, well, let's just jump right into the potential fireworks here.
Okay.
My comments on this are what got me the Darth Silver moniker, hence the previous joke, if you don't know it. I am Darth Silver, the Dark Lord, almost as bad as Jeff Christian, but not quite from the silver bug's perspective, because I have said that the gold-silver ratio doesn't necessarily need to go back to its historic norms. Markets change, and yes, I know that silver is the word for money in many languages, and I know that silver has been money for thousands of years. I've said these same things myself. This is a silver ring on my finger. I'm not anti-silver, but I am a speculator in the markets trying to make money, and I don't want to be religious about my beliefs. I don't want to adhere to something that may no longer be true. And the fact is that the gold-silver ratio has really gone out of whack since the last big peak in 2011, 2012. When silver went way higher than gold on a percentage gain basis, nobody complained about that. But when it dropped more than gold, well, silver's volatile. We were okay with that for a while. But then it was like the little old lady in the advertisement, I've fallen and I can't get up, right? And it's just been out of whack, everybody says, for a decade. And what I'm saying is, you can't ignore that data. You can have reasons for it. You can have excuses for it. You can say whatever you want about it, but it's there and it hasn't gone away. And I won't monopolize the conversation, but one more key point is that silver has always, we've all said this, in every bull market for monetary metals, silver has always lagged gold and then more than caught up. It's one of the reasons why we love silver so much. It didn't do that in 2020. And 2022, looking at 2023, we might be seeing another spike, but we can't really call whatever happens next the same thing that happened in 2020. So we now have A previously unbroken 50-year track record is broken. We have an instance of silver not more than catching up with gold. So I don't have a correct number here. I don't have a phone book sized analysis that I can prove conclusively that silver is never going back to 60 to 1 to gold or 19 or whatever ratio you want. My thesis is very simply that times have changed. Silver's industrial aspect is clearly a major driver in the market space now. Doesn't mean it's not a monetary metal anymore, but it has, it's almost like the Fed, it's got a dual mandate and it doesn't know what to do. And I think the data says the market has changed. And I think it is dangerous for investors whose purpose is to speculate on stocks and make money, completely different from stacking silver as savings. Different question. If you're looking to make money and think about where the markets are going, I think it is dangerous to bet on the assumption that silver has to go back to 60 to 1, let alone 19 to 1, or whatever ratio you want. I think you need to look at the supply and demand in the market now and make projections based on that, if the goal is to make money speculating on silver stocks. Boom.
Interesting view. I'm gonna let the roundtable take that one.
Come on, Chris Marcus. Get it to me on the chin. You can do it.
Well, I agree with what you're saying, that just because we had the 15 to 1 ratio is not to say that we're going back there. It's been a long time since we've been there. When you look at the levels that it came down from in March, where gold over 2,000, silver 26.5. So if we got back to those levels on a percentage return basis, silver would be outperforming. I guess as I've sat here and looked at inflation that, you know, I certainly thought was going to be one of the drivers for the silver price, and now we have the inflation and it hasn't occurred. I wonder if it will take some more overt chaos, something like 2008, which certainly when I look at the situation the Fed's in, where right now they're raising interest rates, but we're seeing trouble in the housing market. And when you see some sort of breakage there and a bigger move in the metals, I guess that's when I would expect silver to at least narrow that ratio, not necessarily going back to the 15 to 1, but I wonder if there's just not been enough pain out there. I mean, people look to gold. We saw Russia do the temporary gold backing. And like you pointed out, I think there's confusion of some people wondering, is silver just become an industrial metal? I think there's a lot of people who are still buying it. You know, we've seen the whole silver squeeze movement for the last year and a half. So there are people who are looking towards it. And with just that small amount of silver being left after the industrial consumption, I wonder if there will still be some sort of break point, and that's when silver finally moves. But I agree with what you're saying, perhaps to expect that it has to go back to 15 to 1. I don't think that's necessarily the case.
Other input? Anybody want to join in?
Yeah, let me
think-
jump in here. Sorry.
Go ahead, Chen.
Yeah, I certainly think 15 to 1 is very achievable. I mean, it's probably will happen in our lifetime. I put it on the record. You know, for me, okay, I'm a speculator. Okay, I'm not a silver buff, first of all. But I also want to point out, in Chinese, bank means a place for silver. Okay, a silver standard has been exist for China in China for thousands of years. So we believe silver is money. But I'm just looking at one perspective from industrial perspective, okay? And silver is the best conducting metal. There's nothing to replace it, very similar to lithium. So I think I called lithium like 7 years ago when I was on CNBC. The anchor actually asked me, what is lithium? They had never heard of lithium. I think people will start hearing about silver in the coming years. And I welcome all the experts going to the Silver Symposium, and Kevin, come to my panel. We can discuss. We can have a face-to-face discussions. I see a potential huge shortage of silver coming just from industrial demand. Okay, then the gold-silver ratio is where you want to be. The difference between silver and lithium is that silver, there's a lot of above-ground storage, a lot of inventory. Lithium doesn't. So when lithium take off, they just take off straight, go up. Silver, we probably need to take off first, take off the silverware, so they have to melt the silverware, and then they will melt the silver coin, amount of silver jewelry. So you think about on each step, what the silver price need to be. I think it's eventually probably will go to triple digit. But put on the record, in 2012, I sold out all my silver at $49. I'm quite proud of it because I see historical 50 was the top, so it was running, so I sold it. But at that time, I think the silver still is the tool for speculation. Now it's getting so strong. I can feel it. The demand is so strong from industrial. That will cause a shortage and then cause people panic to run. And will be very different than before. Before it's a big spike to 50 and come down. This time will be on and on and on. People who sold it at 50 will regret it.
All right. So we've had some different views on silver. Ian, I know you wanted to chime in. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, oh my gosh, how many tailwinds are there behind silver? I mean, you just look at just a few individual ones. Jewelry demand has historically been 250 million ounces. It's low at the moment, but I think I just heard that India is just importing a record amount, and that's individuals buying it as money. It's such a tiny, tiny market. People keep forgetting. I mean, 800 million ounces, 1 billion ounces at $20 an ounce, $19 an ounce. Many, many individuals could just buy not only the annual mine production, they could buy all physical metal above ground out of their bank account, cash on hand. This is why it's different for silver compared to gold. And gold is a tiny amount, I don't know, 10 trillion, $12 trillion compared to 600 trillion of assets under management of perceived wealth. When people realize that Exeter's pyramid is fact, this is going to happen, these higher levels of perceived wealth start chasing real wealth, primary wealth, that we could say there is virtually no silver now compared to the amount of money that's going to flow into it. And yes, it's anecdotally, as a trader, I see it. But when you get individuals buying $3 million of silver to take personal possession, you get individuals buying $4 million to take personal possession. You get major wholesalers getting cleaned out 1,000-ounce bars time after time after time. Enough people know now what the game is, and the game is we buy all the silver until it's all gone. Then we can state what price we want for it. And we only sell it when there's something better to buy, because I'm finding people are getting very well educated. They're not buying it on a whim. They're not buying it because they're a silver bug. They're buying it because it's insurance, it's private. And you don't have to cash it in to hold the gain. And I totally agree with Chen earlier, that when it moves, it's going to keep stair-stepping up. And people who haven't got in are going to be too afraid because they think it will be cheaper next week. And I've had several people say, oh, well, you can't catch it. I'm not going to try and catch a falling knife, but you try and catch a rocket to doing a Mars shot. And that is, in my opinion, what we're going to get.
Bob, you have any thoughts on that? I know you deal with a lot of storage, people buying gold and silver. What's it look like from your perspective in terms of the market?
Well, you need to change the dynamic a little bit and get away from the idea that silver's money, just because we live in a world where debt is looked at as money, or you're going to have there's no way to get around the fiat currency situation. But you got to retrain the public to look at silver as private property, and that's the only way you're going to get the younger generation to get involved in the markets. And in addition to that, you got to get the price of this metal down in terms of premium, so it invites people to actually want to buy this thing. Because right now the premiums the last 2 years have been so high, it's for the maybe the one or first or second transaction where people dipped a toe in the water, they're like, okay, I'll get a piece of this, and they put it away in the sock drawer or vault it or whatever they do. But to put more money into it, it's hard to overcome a premium of 30 or 40 or 50% just to break even, because they don't understand. They see the spot price, they don't understand premium structure. They don't understand what happens if silver does go up to $40. You're going to have people that have been sitting on this forever starting to sell it, and that's going to bring secondary product into the market. There's a lot of dynamics that'll happen if the price goes back up. But you know, a lot of people here I think are absolutely correct. I mean, silver moves like a hockey stick. Once it starts to gain momentum, yeah, gold may move at a 45-degree angle, but then silver just kind of takes off on its own, and it frustrates a lot of people. So it's one of those assets that you can never hold enough when it's going up, and then you bought too much when it's going down. Yeah, that's what it makes it feel like sometimes. So, but I think those are the things, you know, initially that you know, hopefully the public can get kind of re-educated, you know, because in this world, digital cryptocurrencies and paper dollars and other types of assets, there's a lot of competition for a lot of different alternative assets out there. I think the metals market and the industry has to do a better job of education.
Yeah, that's a really big point, and I want to get your opinion on this, Bob, too, and then for anybody. So in terms of education, I feel as though the Bitcoin and the crypto movement during the last cycle did a great job of networking and building momentum, whereas I feel like the gold and silver community maybe potentially lost an opportunity there to kind of use the same techniques. What do you think, Bob? Do you think we're going to catch up to them in how we do the marketing stuff, or do you think it's just a different market and it has to be handled differently?
Well, the problem with our industry, and I've seen it firsthand, is the greed factor. You know, the advantage crypto has is you can buy Bitcoin at the spot price, you know, so to speak, and you can trade it at the spot price. So you don't have to overcome a massive premium just to make any money off of it. Mm-hmm. Yes, with physical metal becomes, you know, there's a cost to make the product. I totally get that. But the way the dealer community works, the way the wholesaler community works, you have this sort of profiting game that's been going on because they've had pricing power. They've had a lot of demand come into this industry, and they've just taken advantage of it. And I've had discussions with a lot of different high net worth individuals with the industry, and they all kind of realize, hey, listen, you know, charging $13 or $12 over spot at the wholesale level for a Silver Eagle right now isn't going to, you know, bring people, you know, or wrap them around the corner to buy the product. And everything is based off the Silver Eagle in a way when it comes to retail product, because Silver Eagles are so pervasive in the industry. They're the most popular product. So then it allows other products to be overinflated in price. People end up buying those products, and then, you know, a year later, the price goes nowhere or goes down. You know, they're having to overcome that premium, and now that, you know, that it's you don't want to lose the momentum, but the way to do it is to try to find a much better level on these premiums amongst a lot of dealers out there, to give the public the chance that, hey, listen, you can make money at this asset, and it's not going to cost you a fortune to get into it. And that's the advantage crypto's had, I would say, because even though I'm not a big believer in a lot of the cryptos out there, or digital tokens and so forth, they do have this idea that, you know, the opportunity to buy it one day and sell it the next, you're not overcoming an extra cost.
Interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, Bob said something really key there. It's private property. And it should be doing a lot better. And you just look at all that World Economic Forum stuff. You'll own nothing and be happy, meaning a few individuals will own everything and will rent it off them. And we're practically in a digital currency situation anyway. And that door's going to shut. It might only be a year and a half away, where there will be no physical cash. So just the aspect of having private property is, I think, is a concept we could help educate people a lot more, that, you know, and being private, that acts as a financial insurance, because every other financial asset is either going to get stolen by the government or debased by the government.
Yeah, it's a good point. I want to turn attention real quick to stocks, because I have Chen here and he writes about those all the time. I put out something over Twitter yesterday on the gold silver stocks. There was an article out that said the gold and silver miners are all-time undervalued to the S&P. And they said all-time undervalued, although the chart just went back a ways. What's your view on that, Chen? How are the miners doing? Is this a buying opportunity? If we're at an all-time low compared to the S&P, does it make sense to buy right now?
Yes, absolutely. There's a silver miner ETF that you can, for those who are not familiar with the silver, you can buy also Silver Miner Junior ETF, which I prefer. Individual stock, you need to make sure, because at current price, $19, a lot of silver miners have very little cash flow, or minus capex, they may be negative, so may need to raise money. You need to be very, very careful. Stock pickers market, you need to make sure that your miner, well, preferably don't need to raise money through this dark period. I think it may be 6 to 12 months away, could be sooner. So you have no dilution, or very little dilution, and good balance sheet, and so you can have all the upside when the time comes. And also another thing I want the investor to think about that is that when silver really runs, a lot of money from outside investor coming into silver. Okay, so what I did observe, especially last year silver squeeze, 2 years ago, almost more than a year ago, silver squeeze all the other, as well as in 2012, tend to be US listed silver stock tend to have a huge pop, especially mean trader behind it. So that's something you want to pay attention to. And then you want to pick the right stock that have very little dilution going forward, and then for the most upside.
Anybody else have a thought on the mining stocks?
Yeah, let me jump in. I'm going to agree with Chen. It's absolutely a stock picker's market. I might disagree a little bit. Like, I wouldn't go for the silver miners or gold miners or even junior. I wouldn't do any of the ETFs because they're a basket. And sorry, but I think I could pick better than this broad basket. And many of them, they've been there, their legacy, they're well-known names. They're not necessarily chosen by the highest level of profitability. And we have public information, the disclosures. You can look at the P&Ls each quarterly and see, who's got the criteria that Chen just outlined. He's quite right. I was just looking at it, the current price of gold, with gold and silver, the current price of gold is equivalent of 1,300 and change 10 years ago. So how many miners, of 10 years worth of inflation, how many miners would have made money at $1,300 gold now? And that's the way I think you need to think about the current context. Silver, interestingly enough, for as much as we think it's undervalued, right, it's the equivalent of, I think it was like $12 over the same time frame. And $12, while it seems painfully low to us now, is actually historically a high price. It wasn't until 2006 that silver broke above 8 and stayed above there. So, but think about it. Who could have made money mining silver at $12 10 years ago? That's the kind of company that you want to be looking at now. Prices are higher, but inflation is higher. We're seeing OPEX just blowouts across the board, even amongst some of the best, most famous silver miners, gold miners too, in the business. OPEX blowouts, CapEx blowouts. And if you're running gensets high in the Andes or something, your diesel costs are up 100% over the last year or so, right? So due diligence matters, careful selectivity. I think Chen's 100% right on that.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about the miners. I know we're going to be on a mining panel. I'll be on a mining panel. I know several of us will be. And we'll talk more about that at the conference. I'll be there August 30th, 2:30 on the exploration stocks, producers, and royalty companies. Let's do a real quick preview, guys, for what you'll be talking about in the conference. And we'll start with Bob. What are you going to be involved with at Silver Symposium, and what will people see you talking about there?
Yeah, Tuesday evening I have with Jeff Christian and Matthew Hunter. We're doing this open forum. I think it's 7 in the evening, if I'm not mistaken. Basically, I don't think there's any time limit to it. So it will kind of be for and against, I guess, the manipulation story, but also what I wanted to get into along with Matthew is more of the market dynamics, trying to explain to people how things are working, how how the interaction with SLV is with the general market, with market makers, with the authorized participants, how that interacts with hedging and the futures market, and explain the COMEX a little bit. So you get more of a dynamic of why the market acts the way it does. And so it just tries to help educate people and let them learn a little bit more than the story that, hey, everything's basically a fraud and there's the prices are being manipulated down. I mean, there's a lot going on. So and obviously we have the spoofing thing, and there's obviously that manipulation big time. But this gets more into the dynamics of it. And then Wednesday, I have, I think at 10 in the morning, is my talk. I was going to talk a little bit more about the structure of the market, who's been, why the prices have been coming down like they have from a Wall Street's perspective, or from the financial side of the business, explaining, the shorting that's going on in the market, who's hedging, who's what commercials are doing and so forth, and sort of the dynamic of the life of silver once taken out of the mine, how many times that's actually sold or shorted as a hedge against that underlying physical asset as it travels through its life history, as it ends up getting, for example, into somebody's home or into a product or something of that nature. So trying to explain that a little bit, and then also a lot of Q&A for people that just have a lot of that just want more knowledge of, hey, what's going on? I heard this on Twitter, or I saw that on YouTube. Could you explain this to me? Or how does this relate? Those types of things where it gives people more information on learning about, some of these outlier topics that is very difficult just to get a lot of information online about. You don't see a lot about lease rates and backwardation and all the physical attributes that's going on with the market right now. And then I believe there's another panel that I'm on a little bit later in the morning or early afternoon. Not sure what time that was at, but that's more about
the crypto.
Yeah. Okay. Is that
I think you're on the crypto versus panel.
Oh, okay.
That's always a fun one.
Yeah. So that's basically what I'll be discussing.
Interesting. So some of your comments are interesting because there is a lot of dynamics to this market. It's not so transparent. I think that's the hardest thing for new people to grasp. This market is not so transparent for people. It's not as though we know where the metals are at all the times, who owns everything. How much is paper versus physical has always been a huge debate. We've had great people with great minds and great experience arguing this back and forth over the years. So yeah, I think we should definitely look forward to that one. That would be a lot of fun. Chen, I know that you're presenting as well. What's your topic going to be on?
Yeah, I'm going to present on Tuesday in the afternoon, 1 o'clock. My topic really about the industrial demand for silver. First of all, I don't fully believe in conspiracy theory. I think it's very hard to fool people all the time. Okay, you can fool some people sometimes, but they cannot fool the whole market for 20 years. It's very hard. I think one of the key reasons was there's a lot of people moving away from believing silver is a monetary tool. That's has been a trend in the past 50 years. I mean, gold stay with the monetary, but central banks seldom own silver. That's one of the key reasons. But I think this is about to change. The silver supply demand picture is about to change. Silver has been producing about 1 billion ounces per year forever. And the industrial demand will just pick up. Once it pick up, we have a real shortage of silver. That's the most exciting part. And then it will getting worse and worse, and silver will go higher. Then maybe more and more people recognize it's a monetary tool. So I put it this way: we're at the dawn of a silver decade, and I welcome people to come to my panel. And then you can, if you don't agree, we can debate. I welcome critics.
Well, we'll definitely have lots of those for sure. It's fun just because you get side conversations with people in the hallway, and you get to learn a little bit more about what they think about. And there's so much intelligence, when you go to a conference like this. I do highly encourage people that are attend all these presentations. And, if you can get to the speakers in the hall, ask them their thoughts and views. There's really so much information that's going to be at the conference. I hope that people really take advantage of it. Lobo, what's your topic going to be on?
Well, clearly, as a Sith Lord, it's my duty to try to gore save the child with my lightsaber there and talk about things that you maybe shouldn't bet the farm on in the silver premise. That said, I am actually a silver bull. And so I think this should be seen as more useful. Like, instead of just rah, rah, rah silver all the time, it's like, okay, here are the headwinds. Here's what I see that can be a problem. But here's why I'm still a bull. And hopefully that will be persuasive. That, it's not just, blind enthusiasm for my favorite metal, but hopefully a more reasoned approach. And I'm going to try to give people more defensive arguments for why silver is a good investment in the year and years ahead than just JP Morgan.
Yeah, I think that's a good perspective to have. And thanks to Chen for joining us. He had to leave at 12:40 to go pick up his child, so that's why he dropped off, and that's why I wanted to get to him before he left. So Ian and Chris, you guys are going to be up at the conference as well. You guys will be hanging around my booth, and also you'll be there attending some of the conference events and be talking with people there as well. I wanted to get your thoughts. What are you guys looking forward to at the conference, if anything?
I'm looking forward to just talking with people there and seeing the perspective on silver. I think a bit has changed, where, again, traditionally looking at silver as the inflation hedge. The inflation came, and we've seen silver go lower. At the same time, the Silver Institute numbers showing supply-demand imbalance. And like Chen mentioned, it's getting tough on a lot of the primary silver miners at the current margins. Obviously, we have a lot of the silver coming from the non-primary miners, but curious to just see how people are feeling with that, mixed with the overall situation with the Federal Reserve, where I think the view in the East is often a little bit different than the view in the West, where I think in the West, people think the Fed has things a bit more under control than others do. But obviously, we've seen a whole debacle with what's going on in Russia and energy shortages, and an environment there where it's almost like now there's someone that at least has the ability to stand up against the dollar policy that we've seen, and we see countries continue to move away from the dollar. And so I guess that's what drew me in initially, seeing that there was some problem with the system we have. Certainly has taken longer to manifest than I've expected, but certainly I'm excited to go there and just have a fresh perspective and see if there are places where I was incorrect in my original analysis, or if it's a matter of just things taking longer. And I think a lot of people are still looking to silver as insurance or a hedge against some of the systemic issues. So it'll be fun to just go and talk with people and learn from some of the speakers.
Ian, what are your thoughts? What are you looking forward to at Silver Symposium next week?
Oh my, many things. Hopefully I'm going to bring some real good special offers to celebrate our second year in business. And it seems like way more than a year ago, doesn't it, Rob? The last one.
It does, doesn't it? I feel like it's been more than a year. Although the last couple of years have been different. We've had the COVID thing. We've had people, we've had all this news about the economy. It seems like everything's changing at once. To the point where I feel like, it's really hard for people to process stuff. And for me, kind of answering my own question, what I'm really going to be looking forward to at this conference is getting together with a lot of people whom I respect and follow and watch, and get their viewpoints on where we are, because everything just is so much different than it was last year. And I feel like things have shifted around, and reading this market and understanding this market, quite a bit hard. I'm not just talking about gold and silver. I'm talking about the market, because we know that the macro story affects the metals and the miners. So for me, it's really going to be absorbing other people's opinions on it, and then me going back, much like Chris, and saying, okay, do I need to adjust my view on this? Is it confirming? Is it challenging? So for me, that's what I do. I like to pick people's brains and really get into what other people think.
Let me just chime in on that, Rob, and add, this is one of the things that I love the most about going to conferences is you have all these thousands of readers, and they write in with questions, and you can't answer them because you're a newsletter writer and you can't give individual investment advice, or you might go to jail or something.
Right.
I always feel bad because they're so sincere, and they respect your judgment, or they just want your 2 cents, right? And you want to help, but you don't want to go to jail, right? Whereas if you come to the conference and I can answer your question from the podium, then it's published to the world. I'm not giving individual advice. I'm talking to everybody. And I just think that's great. I can help a lot of people at once, or mess them up if I give the wrong answer. I don't know, but at least I can answer the question right. I can try to help. And so, you know, unabashed plug for the conference here. I think this is the value that I see the most for the retail investor. Like, why go to this? I can watch it online. Well, you can, but you can't get your question in, or it's harder to get your question in, and so on. So I love that the audience can ask me all the questions they want, and I can answer them.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point to make. You know, I do a lot of digital media. I've done digital media and conferences, both hosting and presenting. The one thing about the conferences I really like, you tend to reach less people, but it's a more intimate setting for the people that you are reaching. And a lot of times what's really fun is the after hour stuff. You know, it's getting to see people after the presentations or talk to them at dinner. And that's the type of thing, you know, that we don't get over the digital media. So I do think there are still reasons to go to conferences for sure. So any last topics that you guys can think of before we wrap this roundtable up? I know we've covered gold silver ratio. We haven't really covered the macro, but we did cover the minors. We did cover what we're expecting to see at the conference. Does anybody want to talk macro right now for a moment? Is there anything in the macro story that people think people should really be paying attention to that maybe they're not at this moment, or just something for people? Maybe we can give like a real quick 1 minute. What should people look out for in this market? I'll start with you, Ian.
I think we should look out for the Fed not pivoting. I've come to the conclusion they're not going to pivot. One reason, I don't know if I can keep this to a minute, but the main reason I think they're not going to pivot, they want to drive the dollar higher. They want to cause depression in the developing economies. They want to crash demand for oil and gas, and that will destroy Russia. So that's the opinion I've come to on the macro.
Okay. Chris, you're next. Anything on the macro that you're thinking about right now that people may just be turning around in their heads to consider?
Well, certainly the whole energy situation, which is creating quite a problem in Europe, I think is something that people are aware of, yet don't think there's an easy answer. In fact, I was doing an interview with someone today where just discussing the dynamics of that, which kind of requires almost a reversal of the West to say, hey, we kind of need that energy. So that's something I'll be looking forward to. Also, a bit back to silver, just some of the interesting metals flows. We've seen metal coming out of London, a lot of metal coming out of registered in COMEX, a lot of metal going into India, and especially Bob's panels I'll be excited to see, because Bob, I know you have unique access. I believe you run a fund as well, in addition to what you're doing on the gold and silver side. So I've appreciated a lot of your Twitter comments where you get to see things that a lot of us don't have as close-up access to. So those are a few things I'll be looking forward to.
Bob, for you?
I appreciate that. Part of what we're I think gonna walk into here is the question is, will the Fed be able to get inflation under control before something breaks? And the issue you're walking into, which is not many people are kind of watching, is the demand or the supply of treasuries that's about to hit the market. It's actually already started to hit the market, but September it's really going to start to pick up the pace. You have, federal spending is starting to kick into gear. You've had the tax revenue season, which was basically kind of waned itself out by June. Those surpluses are gone. You're going to have tax revenues probably start to wane. So that's going to, as the economy slows down and the housing market slows down and so forth, that's going to pick up demand for more supply. You have the stimulus package that was just passed, the $700 billion or whatever that was, Inflation Reduction Act, I guess. We'll see if it reduces inflation. But that's going to create more supply of treasuries. And at the same time, you have the Fed, who's now draining or reducing their balance sheet, not buying those treasuries that they were buying 95% of from 2020 to 2021 or so. So there's going to be a crowding out effect that's going to start hitting in this market, and it may impact the stock market and bond markets a lot worse than it will hit commodities, because the issue is, if you don't solve the supply issue chains, the commodity is a world of its own. I mean, the economy is going to people are going to keep buying stuff. They're going to keep living. But the problem you have is the financialization of the treasury market, and who's going to buy all these treasuries. You know, if the Fed's not buying them, the banks aren't buying anymore, the foreign central banks aren't buying them anymore, they're reducing their dollar exposure, and you start to see more transactions from country to country, not using dollars anymore, but transacting more in their own local currencies. Those are all factors that we're walking into over the next probably year or so, that could give gold and silver a huge lift as confidence starts to wane in the financial markets. So that's something to watch out for.
Okay. And Lobo, yourself?
Yeah, I think all of the above sounds good. I'll push back a little bit on the strong dollar thesis, in that there's also the argument for the federal debt, and how if you can inflate that away, that makes life easier for the government. So there's another argument that they actually want high inflation. They'll pretend to fight it, but they'll actually let it run high so that they can quietly default on obligations they can't pay. I can't say which one's right. I can just say there is a different perspective there. But I think tying into what Bob just said, looking at the headwinds ahead for the economy, the recession, and back to silver, it does have this industrial side. And that can be a great win-win thing. When you have, safe haven demand and high industrial demand, then silver, there's an argument there for actually what Chen said about the ratio going way lower. But if you're in a time where the recession is heating up, and that will weigh on the industrial side of silver, there's no question in my mind. And that's one reason why silver isn't where it should be right now, is because markets move in advance, they're forward looking, they see the recession coming. There's people trying to move the goalposts of what makes a recession and not, but the markets see it. People ain't dumb, right? And a recession is always a headwind for commodities, and industrial commodities, it's a tough time. So that doesn't mean I'm a bear on silver. I'm saying, particularly for silver bugs, watch this. You could see, what I would see is actually tremendous buying opportunities, because the natural response of the powers that be, once the recession becomes undeniable, I'm going to disagree with something else I just heard. I think the Fed does pivot. I think there is zero tolerance for pain. It's no fault of the people's own. We got to bail them out, send them stimmy checks, whatever. So I do think the government pivots fiscal and monetary policy when that recession becomes undeniable. Before then, though, industrial metals and that aspect of silver will drag on silver. And I would see that as an opportunity to back up the truck before the next leg upwards.
Yeah. And I think all you guys hit on the elephant always in the room here in the United States. It's the Fed. What's the Fed going to do? Pivot or not pivot? Because that easing or tightening, whatever their agenda is, affects everything else. And certainly the entire market watches it and reacts to it. We've certainly seen that over the years. And it's interesting. I've seen people back and forth on that subject of why they can and why they can't. It'll be interesting to see what Powell does. I mean, this is his legacy moving forward, starting January 1 of this year going forward. To me, is his legacy. How does he handle it? What does he do? How does the Fed address this? Because they're in a really tough spot. I think everybody agrees on that. They're in a tough spot. This is not an easy market to be in, and the central bank certainly has so much power. How they utilize that power and what the results are, I think, is going to be one for the history books in my mind. So I definitely, from the macro standpoint, that's what I'll be looking at. We're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. I wanted to go ahead and just take a look at everybody's website here for a moment. Of course, we're all going to be at the Silver Symposium put on by Stock Pulse. This is August 30th and 31st. We will all be there. Chen, who was on the program with us earlier, who'll be presenting, runs Chen's Stock Picks. You can get there by chenpicks.com. We also have the Independent Speculator, Lobo's newsletter. You can reach at independentspeculator.com. Arcadia Economics, of course, everybody on my channel knows that. It's Chris's spot where he has great information, links to his videos. I think you have a mobile app, Chris, all sorts of stuff that you can get on your website. Of course, Ian runs ARK Silver. He's on our program all the time. Highly recommended if you want to buy the metals. And again, we have Bob Coleman, who runs goldsilvervault.com. I have used this service. Very, very happy to do so. And actually, the way that I did it was Ian provided the metal. I bought it. Bob stored it for us, and it was a perfect little transaction. So it's putting a couple of guys together, and that way I never had to touch the metal. It was awesome. So I think that we're going to do it for the roundtable here. It's been a good preview. Hope to see all you guys back on the channel, after the symposium, if you're interested in joining. Thank you, everybody, for your opinion, and thanks everybody for watching the roundtable. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.